Hotly anticipated to push the series back into a more positive light, Sonic Frontiers has a lot of promising new horizons to show us. Bravely, it decides to turn its linear point A to point B game franchise philosophy on its head, and sets a tone for itself that aims to speak to lifelong fans who have steadily been growing up, becoming mature, and demanding that the series follow suit in depth and maturity. The players of Frontiers will find a game that aims to be grown up alongside its dedicated fan following, being bold in choosing new directions for the staple speed-based gameplay that Sonic has carried as a hallmark for all of his 30+ years in the limelight. Players will also find a game pushing its cuddly mascot collection of main characters through untapped levels of emotional development in a story that feels way more grown up too. Characters are more often than not brooding in this game rather than bouncing about as they have done before. Of course, there's lighthearted moments interspersed within, and once again, serious nostalgia comes to the fore as something that the creators use heavily to inspire anecdotes in the story and core gameplay elements. But if I'm allowed to share what I think, it is in the new rather than the old where the game truly shines the brightest. It's in the new things attempted by the creators that honestly point the way towards a bright future for the speedy hedgehog that fans can anticipate with delight, so long as those new features in gameplay and story direction are focused on, polished up, and pushed forward above all else. The things that I enjoyed were plentiful and powerful, but my overall enjoyment of the package as a whole does come with a few major caveats that should be made known to everyone still contemplating giving Sonic Frontiers a go. So let's get started. Perhaps the biggest overhaul to the game series formula featured in Frontiers is the inclusion of Sonic's first truly open world, or open zone as those involved in the development prefer to call it. The hub worlds of previous titles were the closest we had seen before this game's release, and they were not even really considered open, but each of the Starfall Islands are genuinely the real deal in terms of a space designed to be mostly all access from the very beginning of the player's entry into it. Barring a narrow linear segment in the game's opening to acclimatise Sonic and the player to the features and perils of the lands that await, vast open vistas of terrain constitute Sonic's playground for this adventure, and in my opinion, it's a completely sensible fit for the Hedgehog's speed-centric methods of getting around. The start and end points of any journey on foot are no longer consistently laden with forced twists, detours, or obstacles. Reaching a destination is as easy as just going as the crow flies for the most part. Those who wish to experience controlling Sonic simply blasting through open terrains such as grassy fields, huge sand dunes, and mountain passes at max speeds, such as he does in other non-game media, can get that sensation at any time it pleases them here. Despite the majority of attention being highlighted on the ability to traverse the game's open zone at lightning pace, the obstacle course design philosophy from previous games is also utilised in Frontiers. You'll find several hundred miniature chunks of aerial platforming challenges consisting of the usual Sonic obstacle fixings, such as zip lines, springs, boost pads, and the like. The idea of these is limited to being a tiny course to navigate in order to win some kind of collectible, and typically these can be beaten in anywhere between a few seconds flat to about half a minute, depending on the length of the obstacle course. There is also a more unique usage of these. When solving simple puzzles to progressing mapping the islands, players will also gradually reveal long paths in the sky between landmark points as a sort of pseudo-fast travel system to also cross distances quickly, though more direct fast travel options can be unlocked via progression. And while it may seem like these short platforming challenges get arbitrarily dotted across the open map at random, players who employ a little bit of vision in planning their movements can achieve a surprisingly satisfying flow between certain mini-courses as they travel along. Yet, there is also no need to do so if that isn't possible for others, as tackling each mini-course one by one is also a valid option. It's not like the player's going to run out of things to check out anytime quickly when beginning to explore the environment. With there always being something for them to do, the game does mostly well to not leave the player stranded waiting for something to come up. And it also doesn't necessitate them to pick up every single collectible either, as these do number in their thousands. But only a fraction will be needed to advance in the adventure, and often the player can collect all that they need without even noticing it as they conduct their exploration of the Starfall Islands. And the tale that unfolds during the adventures on these islands borders on being one of the most maturely written for the series, which, on reflection, may be an easy bar to clear considering the calibre of past Sonic stories. But there are long and complex journeys of development that each of the main cast go through. The discovery of how the islands function and how the ancient civilization of this land lived utilising the Chaos Emeralds is an interesting part of the tale, but it's the plight of the main characters themselves that carry the hugest investment. Each of the companions, while trapped in their digitised manifestations, go through deep periods of self-reflection and come out of them with a better understanding of their wants and needs. Unexpected emotional moments for characters not typically known for hard emotion add such an intriguing extra depth that previous stories otherwise mostly didn't scratch the surface of. And no plight is seemingly harder than Sonic's own one that he undertakes to rescue his friends, taking on corrupting powers over the course of the story that very clearly cause him discomfort, possibly even doubt, and having to routinely gather the emeralds over and over again to achieve the only power possible to combat the larger threats of the islands. It's crystal clear that the writers aim for nailing the serious tone this time around, assisted by the vocal performance direction toning down the bright, somewhat silly portrayals of before. And while some will lament the change in vocal direction, I personally can see that this was likely a direction taken knowingly by choice. It was a choice to help achieve the broodier, mature feel targeted for older, more mature followers of the franchise, and to match up with the overarching theme of mystery when discovering a new uncharted environment. Bringing Ian Flynn on board to be responsible for the script was a most welcome choice too, as the Japanese staff developing Frontiers felt his accomplishments in writing for the Archie and IDW Sonic comics meant that he had the best understanding of the characters. And I really did get the sense that the story was intended to be less cartoony, more comic-y. That may not even be a word, but hopefully you know what I mean. To help achieve the mature, brooding tone for Frontiers' story, I think that the cinematic direction couldn't simply do as it had done before. Previously, the stiffness and limited fluidity of animations in the cinematics of older games simply left too much to be desired, and would be considered unacceptable with that style merely just copied. And luckily, I feel that the effort in cinematic presentation has been slightly improved in several facets. Animations have a slightly bigger pool of poses and actions that get utilised more, and are more carefully transitioned between to erase some of the stiffness, and they're accompanied by an equally slightly larger pool of camera shots and pans. The sweeping, establishing shots are a good fit for giving the player a sense of scale. The views from far afield, and those views that pan from bottom up to top down, also punctuate the grand spectacles seen in the unfolding adventure, and the compositions strike a satisfying middle ground by closing in on the hard action sequences while also including long shots of the same action unfolding, allowing us to both feel near to the pulsating encounter and also let us lord over the events from afar. And speaking of pulsating encounters, none are more so than the matchups with the colossal Titan robots. I believe that the creators of these encounters truly had the most enjoyment in deciding how they played out, because that enjoyment really rubbed off for me especially. It just goes to show the power that playing through something in a game designed purely for enjoyment's sake has over the audience. Dealing damage when the enemy is open is completely freeform, and the player can utilise all combat techniques learnt up to that point to do so. And the pure spectacle of each entire fight, consisting of the larger amount of power behind the combat, the heavy, high-energy vocal tracks heard during the battle, and the epic cinematic sequences seen. It's clear that these are intended to be the standout moments of the game, and they're insanely good resolutions to the journeys taken on each of the islands. For how they made me and many other players feel, these Titan encounters will be the parts of Frontiers which will be largely praised and talked about when recommending this game to other people. Oh, do the move, come on, give me a good move, come on, yes! Yes! This game is fun again. This game is a lot of fun. This game is so much fun again. Yes. Oh, parry. Aha! You thought you could, but you couldn't. This is the game. This is the game. Yes, I did just do a giant swing on a cyber snake. I did just do that. Oh, grab the sword. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. That brought me close to tears, holy shoot. So for me personally, My enjoyment of the things I found to be enjoyable in Sonic Frontiers have caused me to make a case for this being one of the best 3D adventures for the series in a very long time. I definitely love the bits that I like, but as I warned at the start, my enjoyment of this game does come with several big asterisks and caveats, plus other smaller notes of where a tiny amount more polishing would have made the overall product even better. While travelling and viewing the locales of the Starfall Islands, players will notice that there is an ongoing day and night cycle present, which allows for the landscapes to be seen both bathed in warm sunlight or under the darkest of starry skies. There is beauty to be seen in both instances, but there are issues that occur when the passage of time between day and night becomes more than purely cosmetic. For instance, when it becomes an involved element of gameplay. Solving a few of the mapping puzzles requires the player to approach it only at nighttime. In the light of day, it simply becomes unavailable. The problem with this exists because it forces players to arbitrarily wait for potentially long periods of time if this one puzzle ends up being the only thing left to the player to tackle in each open world. A definite improvement would have been to take from other games and employ a system to let the player speed up the passage of time some way, maybe at a nearby campsite or a similar landmark. Next up, let's talk about the abilities gained to aid in moving around the land and in combat with enemies. A basic skill tree and leveling up system are employed in Sonic Frontiers, with new fighting techniques tied to collecting skill points to unlock them. It's small enough to be fully completed in a single run of the story, but should the skill tree be finished earlier than the ending point, the player will find that skill points earned after this point will hold no other purpose for the rest of the game, making encounters with smaller enemies in the open world also hold less value and become purely throwaway. My suggestion would be to utilise the leftover skill points to improve another facet to leveling up. Through collecting tiny cocoa and power seeds, Sonic's overall stats can be boosted with the Elder and Hermit characters. Boosting the attack and defense stats with the seeds is simple and quick, yet boosting the overall speed and ring capacity stats with the cocoa is needlessly time-consuming, only offering a single point to either at each time. What needed to be done here is to allow the player to use all of the cocoa held at that time at once and distribute the level points earned to those attributes in one fell swoop. Also, to bring the skill points back into the equation, why not have those also be applicable for increasing the speed and ring capacity attributes too? It would place value on those skill points for a much longer time, or at least until Sonic stat points reach their maximums. Those additions in terms of quality of life improvements would streamline the progress of both story and character stat development. Another facet that is being critically judged is the abrupt inclusion of hugely different gameplay sections that feel largely like an interference of the game's flow. Whether deliberately planned from the start of the development time, or a necessity to implement due to looming deadlines in said development time, it's still an unexpected event nonetheless to move suddenly into an Ikaruga-styled shooting segment that is unavoidably a part of progressing the story, and its inclusion has thusly been a polarizing one. However, there has to be one section of the game which ended up coming off as so completely unpleasant and irredeemable that I deem its entire removal to be necessary to improve the game. And that very section is this pinball game. To call this pinball section a pacebreaker is the biggest understatement of all time. The player must reach a wholly absurd points threshold to succeed, with the progress of building up that score comparable to the speed of a glacier. Multiplier and score resets will occur as a result of failures, with some of these failures being completely unfairly thrown out of the player's control because of the table's design. Plus, them being told to send the ball into a finishing zone after collecting enough points is diabolically thrown in as a bad surprise out of nowhere. This information being withheld until after fighting with the dreadful and arduous feel of the pinball game for so long is purely unacceptable. I also feel the same way about not being told about the need to stockpile rings before the major Titan robot encounters, for as much as I love them, but certain aspects of the pinball table were clearly not play tested enough, with hitting certain bumpers in a certain way sending the ball into the gutters, leaving the player unable to do anything about it. And considering its placement in the adventure and the content locked behind it, meaning that this minigame becomes a necessity to move on with the game, this pinball section is a horribly insulting affront to players, a severe stain on this game that either needs completely overhauling or simply being erased from the game for the sake of other players. This was the only point in my playthrough where I felt completely miserable, and it has to be up there amongst the worst parts of any Sonic title, and I would even dare to say it is absolutely the worst thing in the entirety of the series. For as long as it exists, I will always hasten to unconditionally love Sonic Frontiers, and it breaks my heart to have to do so. Because, you see, Sonic Frontiers is certainly a bold step up for 3D Sonic Adventures that offers a glimpse into brighter things to come if the direction that this game takes is given more focus going forwards. Like I said, I think it's the new things tried in this game that outperform the returning older elements from before. For as much as the team developing these games love to remind lifelong fans about classic elements of the Sonic series through nostalgic touches to environment and gameplay styles, like reusing old level themes and even replicating old level layouts in the cyberspace stages, and rather begrudgingly even including the pinball section, is it really something that fans and critics of the series really want each time? This has led me onto a rather deep search into my soul to try and answer a question that I've been thinking about. Should Sonic Team think about leaving the nostalgia behind? I think the answer to that is, maybe it's for the best. It's a fact now that the most vocal and passionate people among the audiences that play Sonic games nowadays are the lifelong fans, who have grown up and experienced the thick and the thin with their beloved characters, and all of the highs and lows of the series. And it's those same people who are becoming more and more directly involved with the development of future experiences. They want risks to be taken with new ventures, they want to enjoy deeper narratives for their characters, they want to see their beloved franchise go places. Now, I'm not saying that nostalgia should be done away with for good, rather, I'd like to say that both the old and the new can coexist, but in separate bubbles. Both have their supporters and both have talented people involved in bringing these experiences to life. For nostalgia-inspired trips down memory lane, you can hand those projects off to teams led by the likes of Christian Whitehead, who are responsible for the resurgence of good and tight Sonic experiences inspired by classic titles. As for Sonic Team themselves, I think they would do very well to tailor their experiences that they make in-house towards going in this new, bolder, impactful direction that Sonic Frontiers has shown us. The open world formula has proved to be a largely positive aspect, and fans have enjoyed the deeper narratives of this game's story that pack a more emotional punch. Trying those new things and working hard to polish them up to high standards is what's going to make me truly excited for the future of 3D Sonic games. Merely acknowledging nostalgia in an anecdotal capacity is plenty enough, without needing to consistently feed us with experiences that heavily bank on riding that nostalgia wave while also feeling imperfect or disingenuous while doing it. What will make me happiest of all is if we see Sonic truly reaching far across new frontiers and moving towards the cold dawns, towards those new horizons. And as it stands for me at least, Sonic Frontiers is an excellent starting point. It's a just reward for the level of devotion and investment given by the supporters of the series, with that devotion also being acknowledged by those behind the production of the game. A special credits song which was in fact discussed by music director Tomoya Otani as being written like a heartfelt message to players, respecting them for continuing to be involved in the Sonic series through all of its glory days, and its toughest moments too, and letting the players know that they have good reason to be excited for the future. And I for one would love to be vindicated on that trust I place in Sonic Team going forward. There's a dream on the horizon, and, you know, I really want them to chase it. A big supermassive hello to you all. Thank you very much for watching this review video. Be sure to leave your likes and comments down below, and if you want to see more, click the subscribe button and the notification bell icon. If you want to catch my Twitch live streams on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, as well as see the stream highlights, go to twitch.tv/LauraPetal to find out more, and make sure to follow my other socials on Twitter, Facebook, Discord and Instagram. Thanks again for watching, stay you and stay awesome, and I'll see you all later on.